Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have an amazing guest, Mr. Luca Arrigo. How are you, Luca?
Fantastic. Doing very, very good. So happy to be here with you. I always look forward to our conversations, Andrew.
Exactly. Well, and the last time we were together in person was actually when we were walking around. I remember we were drinking some very strong alcohol. And actually, we were in the Serbian mountains, weren't we? Remember that?
Yeah, it was not gin, it was rakia, but it was definitely good.
Yeah, this is
Good
this is the rakia and session. No, rakia and tonic sessions. Yeah,
That's
exactly,
it.
rakia. That's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, no. So for the audience who are listening today, it's quite an interesting story. This actually, because actually it's a bit like a circle. It's like a circle of life. So last April, I went to the European Startup Summit in Malta, in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean. And I don't think we didn't meet there, did we? We didn't meet there. So and then I met these two gentlemen, Milan and Zoran, who then said they got this cunning plan to create a digital nomad festival in Serbia, in Niš, in Serbia. And he said, "Would I like to go along and speak?" I said, "You must be mad, but I'll welcome along anyway." So in August last year, I jumped on a flight and ended up in Niš in Serbia, and met all these lovely people. These about a few hundred digital nomads. And who should I meet but Mr. Arrigo? And what did I find out then? He's from Malta. So it's like a big circle. It's like all that's the Malta. And actually, funny enough, just calling it out, is literally in about, I think it's about a month from now, there is the next European Startup Summit in Malta. And Thomas Orr, who's the CEO of that, sent me a message saying, "Andrew, have you got your ticket yet? Are you coming back?" So it's actually 3 days before my birthday as well. So you never say never. You know, I might be. I mean, I don't know. Well, Luca's going to go through what his background is and where he is, and where he's. I can never keep up with Luca actually because he's just been in so many different countries. It's just I can't keep account. But anyway, that's my little intro to Luca. So for helping the audience, I suppose today, could you just explain a little bit about what's keeping you awake at night, what's going on in Luca's world, and then we can go through the rest of the episode. Over to you.
I mean, my main focus right now is definitely my latest startup, which I started out 2 years ago, building a brand called AI Model Agency. It came about when I first saw the image generation AI, and I immediately saw an opportunity to apply that to the fashion industry. So for 2 years, I was a solo founder, taking care of product, marketing, development, sales, the whole 9 miles, the whole 12 miles. It's been very recently that actually the last month that brand has been acquired by an established AI company called Better Pick that's doing 3 million a year in AI headshots, which is a very crowded space, but they do have the best tech on the market, so they are emerging as the market leader. After meeting with Ricardo and Miguel from Better Pick, I explained to them my vision for fashion and AI imagery, and we decided to merge together and launch a new company that's building upon all of the lessons that Better Pick has. And we've called this company Better Studio, where our mission is to introduce the fashion industry a more efficient, cost-effective way to create photography of fashion garments, of shoes, of clothing, on top of artificially generated models. And that's the gist of it. That's the core product we have launched with. But we do have some really exciting plans on where to take it next. And I'm really excited for the next few months to build out that vision with a very, very talented team that is remote. We're all working from different countries inside of the EU. And I'm really happy that we're a startup team that's trying to bring a worldwide solution in an industry that Europeans are very well known for. Some of Europe's largest companies are fashion brands. So I do hope that this is a chance for a European company to shake up the world and prove that European companies can become unicorns too.
So you're going to be a unicorn fashtech. Is it going to be called, is it called fashtech? I don't know. Fashion technology. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan.
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, 'cause I mean, I know you were on stage as I was on the stage. I talked about my podcast, the G&T Sessions, actually, about all these amazing guests. It's great to have you on this show today. But and also how everybody should have a podcast. And given you're such a charismatic guy, I'm just waiting for the better studio, the AI fashion podcast, something like that coming soon or something like that. Maybe that's one of your grand reveals a bit later.
Well, actually,
Announce it.
I do have a podcast that I started a few years ago.
Okay.
It's called Negozio Podcast. Negozio in Maltese. I am a Maltese person. It means business. I created that brand as my personal brand. It was a moment in my life where I noticed that I'm going to be a serial entrepreneur for the rest of my life. So I decided I need a brand that I will never sell. So I decided that the Negozio will be that brand that will remain with me no matter what I do in my day to day.
How do you spell that? How do you spell it?
That's Negoz.
Okay, and that means business in Maltese. Okay, fantastic.
It means
oh, cool. Yeah, no. So I mean, we will jump around a little bit because I think the thing is that one of the things that I think when you were on stage, you were talking about all your startups that you'd had. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what the headline was. It was just such an impressive headline. What was the headline from the presentation in Serbia? I can't remember what it was.
When I do a keynote, I like to use the 5 startups before 25. I'm now on my 6th startup.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And I've had 4 exits so far. Yeah.
So you see, this is why he leads a life of jet setting. You see, he's got like a Learjet parked outside, and it's like, I'm on the podcast with Andrew. Can you hold on, please?
I mean, I think the best is yet to come. I have done maybe some interesting things, but nothing compared to some of the really talented entrepreneurs that I have had the pleasure to meet as well, such as yourself. And I hope
I'll pay you later. I'll pay you later, Luca. But no. So explain the narrative on that 5 startups in before 25. I mean, that's pretty impressive in anybody's book, right? But what's the kind of headlines on that?
Well, when I could maybe just start with where I began my working life. I grew up in Malta, and at 16, 17 years old, during the summer, I used to help out a friend of mine who was a DJ. I also had a cousin who used to organize huge festivals in Malta and bring, like Calvin Harris and Afrojack to the country. And for both of them, they would give me tickets to sell. And I used to walk around an area of Malta called Pacheville during the daytime. In the summer, it used to be very hot. And even in the evenings. And I used to basically, cold sell on the streets. So just approach tourists sitting on a bench inside of Burger King, walking in the street, and tell them there's the best event of your life happening tomorrow night. You definitely have to go, and then convince them to buy the ticket from me. So that was my first experience kind of in doing something face to face and selling a product. And I did that, every summer till I turned 18. Are we still on? Because it seems like it's a bit roast. Okay. Hopefully my internet is good. But yeah, so when I turned 18, I finished my A levels, and I decided to move over to Australia. And in Australia, I was there for a few months. And whilst I was living in Australia, I took on a sales job. And funnily enough, that's the sales job was a door-to-door sales. So I used to be driven to a neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, dropped off for 6 to 8 hours, and spend those 6 to 8 hours knocking on people's doors, very often getting the door slammed in your face. But that was a very interesting experience. So I used to sell different things, solar panels, charity subscriptions, and I used to get a commission from it. I don't feel so great about having got commission for selling charity subscriptions, but it was the only job I could get as an 18-year-old in Australia. So I did it, and it built a lot of kind of a very thick skin for rejection. So people insulting you for trying to do your job, and having to keep a smile on your face when you knock on the next door and do the same pitch over and over again. It was a very tiring experience, but I think that definitely built my resilience up to a very good place. I then got to travel in Southeast Asia on the way back to Malta, and I went on my first pub crawl. So when I discovered there was 20-year-olds making good money selling pub crawls, and I come from a night party background, a party island, and there was no pub crawl in Malta, I immediately thought that that's a very good idea for me to start up in Malta. So I did. It was funny because other people had tried before me to start a pub crawl, and the bars and the hostels were telling me, oh yeah, people have tried, it won't work. But I did it anyway, and I used to, again, walk into the hostels, sell the tickets face to face in the beginning. I started learning about digital marketing, learned how to build a website, learned how to run ads, learned how to build relationships with different venue owners. And over 3 years, I built it into a very successful business. By the end of it, it was running 3 nights a week in the summer, where I used to have 100 to 150 people each night. We used to recruit a seasonal team. Eventually, I had a manager, so I didn't used to need to be there all night. I built relationships with the largest boat party on the island, and I started selling his tickets. And the following year, he started selling my tickets, and then the year after that, he bought the pub crawl from me. So that
I've
was
just,
then
I've just realised Malta's going to be renamed the Arrigo Island. That's what it's going to be named.
Yeah, maybe. That would be nice. Yeah, have a statue of me somewhere. I think I've got to do a bit more before I could warrant a statue. But let's manifest it, shall we? Yeah. So I did that for a while. By the time I was 24, I noticed that if I continue working in nightlife, I'm probably going to age a bit too quickly. So I decided that it was time for me to exit, and the process of an exit has remained the same. That was the same kind of experience that I followed up in the future, where it's build a business, make it successful, find someone who is compatible to integrate vertically with your business, work together, build a relationship of trust, and then offer for them to buy you out, so that they will have a complementary service product that they can continue to operate when you are gone. Building processes was also something I learned how to do in that business, and it was also a very fun thing to do in my early 20s. Yeah, so that's where I kind of started.
That's cool. That's an interesting journey into it. I didn't realize that all that detail actually. Kind of like it's a bit like travels in your blood, but also being creative, I suppose, isn't it? I suppose that's a good segue into what you're doing now, isn't it? With the the Better Studio and AI model stuff that you just mentioned. Maybe you can go through that and just explain a bit about that. But is there a fashion kind of heritage in what you've done before? Is that why you've got into that, or is it just like an opportunity?
That's interesting that you mentioned, the travel is in my blood, because I used to really enjoy being around travelers. So it used to always feel like I'm on holiday at home whilst visiting hostels and working in the tourism sector. So that was definitely something that I enjoyed, having kind of being at home, but being able to interact with people from all over the world. That was really cool. And it was interesting that some of these people ended up reappearing in my life a few years later, but I was doing something completely different. So like the pub crawl guy is now selling something. So yeah, it was cool, to segue into that. How did I get into fashion? Well, I mean, I take inspiration from a lot of places. Um, uh, sometimes I do get inspired by people who I spend a lot of time with. So I had started a company that is called Metaverse Architects, that was kind of inspired by someone I used to date who was an architect. The name, at least, was inspired by that, and I always learn from whoever I spend time with. So, and yeah, it was similar with the fashion. Somebody I used to go out with used to love fashion. I think that kind of cross pollination came about partly from there. But yeah, when I saw the image generation AI and how it could be a tool for fashion brands, that immediately lit up some
So
light
you mean
bulbs.
like the mid-journey stuff, or?
No, so yeah, mid-journey stuff. In like 2022, in December 2022, I generated my first AI photos of myself, and seeing that I can make myself wear any outfits or different themes. I could make myself look even better than I actually look. It
That's
opened up
impossible, Luca. That's impossible.
And initially, actually, I started with focusing on wedding dresses. So I figured that wedding dresses are something that people spend a lot of time trying to decide on. It's a high ticket item.
High ticket, high stress.
High ticket stress, both before and after. And yeah, so I was like, okay, like this could be a useful tool for somebody trying to choose something that they're going to spend a lot of money on. And when the clients actually started telling me, can you put me inside of the dress and not just generate a dress? That made me realize that there's this new opportunity is to create a business model which could function like a model agency, but one that is completely AI. So I did a bit of looking around. I found AImodelagency.com. I registered it, and I worked on a lot of SEO to validate the business model. So for a year and a half, I was validating the business model, building my own tools, marketing, selling it, to a point where I've kind of learned a lot about the fashion industry. Had to learn what is a flat pack shot, what is on model photography, what are ghost photography. There's such a term as ghost photography. I learned, and also interacting with people and figuring out what are their problems. So some early examples where was a Saudi jeweler who would send gold jewelry to influencers, and sometimes that gold jewelry will not be sent back. So that's obviously a sunk cost that goes on top of the fee that you would pay for the photos. I'm finding out that children brands are also their own niche use case. And because children models are more difficult to work with, harder to get permission, it's more complicated process. There's brands that also have struggled to find plus size models because most model agencies do not have plus size models on their portfolio.
Yeah.
And just figuring out also that there's a lot of fashion brands that do want to save money on the photo shoots. And later on, we've now developed some more use cases and how we can use it for targeted marketing and some other interesting concepts, which I won't reveal too much until they're ready. But yeah, I think we're on our way to something really special here. The brands that we're pitching to are on board for the proof of concepts. We're building out a very, very competitive product. When I launched, I was the only one on the market. There was nobody doing it. Today, there are a couple of companies that do it. And it's funny because some of these companies are backed by millions of dollars. Some of them are backed by billion-dollar companies. The technology that I have adopted from Better Pick is blowing their results out of the water. So for me, that's super exciting that I have an opportunity to shake up the market again and hopefully build something really special.
One of the things I was just to say, I mean, based on your story, is actually you're probably the best friends of the Saudi gold guy, because obviously he doesn't have the loss of losing all that kind of gold going to these different influencers. But you're probably not the best friend, or you're not going to get very many Christmas cards from photographers.
Well,
or is it? I don't know. I'm trying to get my head around.
This is the thing, right? And I see it not just in the AI fashion, right? It's kind of like AI across the board. If you are a professional photographer, you have a skill in understanding the market already, because that's what you might have been working on for 5-10 years. I had to spend 2 years learning about the fashion industry. You might already know about the fashion industry. So for you, this is just a tool that can help you to offer new services to your existing clients. And so I believe that the photographer...
So you actually, photography could be a kind of a ICP, a kind of a potential partnership or customer you could work with.
Yeah, photographer could be a user of my software. That's at the end of the day, you still need to put an input and you get an output, right? And at the end of the day, different clients want different things. Some photographers, obviously, if your client wants pictures in Paris and you're located in Spain, it's a bit complicated to get the photos done in Paris. But now, as a photographer, you can take photos in Spain. Make it look like they were taken in Paris. So I just think that yes, there are definitely photographers who will comment on the ads and call out this is complete. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but complete bullshit. Then there are others who are maybe a bit more of could be considered early adopters.
Embrace it. Yeah.
Embrace it, and they will win.
Yes, I mean, I was going to say, where would you say? Oh, I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Where is the center of fashion in Europe?
So there's there's big four, they're called, like not big four in terms of the accounting firms, but big four in the terms of fashion cities. And these are Milan, London, New York, and I believe Barcelona. I could be wrong about
Paris?
the last one.
Not Paris?
Paris, yeah. Barcelona is definitely the top 10, but the big four is Paris, Milan, London, New York.
Because I would have thought it'd be probably Paris would be probably the top one, too, with, you know, the brands that are based there. Is that right? I don't know. Just thinking.
They refer to the big four when it comes to the fashion weeks. So these are the most important fashion weeks in terms of influencing the rest of the world.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. That's cool. But at least we got three. We got one in the UK, then got two in Europe, and then you got one in the US. Anyway, yeah, because that's an interesting segue actually. Because one of the things that the audience may not know about, but if you followed Luca on his Instagram account, which I obviously religiously do, you never know what's going to appear on that account. Is a few weeks ago. Well, actually, it's funny. The same person. I was in the audience last April, and a certain individual called Robert got up on stage, and he then declared he was the Prime Minister of Malta, and he did a very nice speech before a very esteemed Werner Vogels, who's the CTO of Amazon, went on stage for a fireside chat, which could have gone on for 3 hours, I think, based on all his stories that he's got. But I thought what was very impressive with Robert was actually that his messaging, and he was very on message about the opportunity, I think, for Malta. But I know you've got a little story about that's happened recently, haven't you, Mr. Arrigo, that you're going to hopefully explain? Because I think I was so impressed with you, and so kind of like high 10. I was sending high 10s over Instagram, especially with the hats you had as well. So I'll let you explain to the audience what you've been doing. It's been very impressive.
I'll explain why I did what I did and why I'm doing what I'm doing first, and I'll get into it. But I believe in a regret minimization lifestyle. So rather than thinking about, what you want to do, think about, or like in the moment, think about what you will regret not having tried before you die. So I believe that is very important.
Just to jump in a second, there's a guy called Stephen Kotler who says, "You got to kick ass until you kick the bucket." That's his phrase.
That's it. I
mean, I think it's perfect for what you're just going to say.
That's it. And then I think about everything maybe from a startup mindset as well. And one thing we entrepreneurs hear very often is the hardest part is getting started. So I looked at politics a bit like that, partly inspired by people like Xavier Milei, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, and I did actually start to support Donald Trump in a sense last summer, which for most people who like Donald Trump is quite late, but it took me a while for me to be able to stomach him. But eventually I understood him a bit better. Maybe I stopped just reading the headlines, or I don't know, but my perception changed of him too. I noticed that there was a big movement happening across Europe, and this was spun off from the effective accelerationism that came out of Silicon Valley. And this whole movement across Europe is today succeeding at its goals. It started out as European accelerationism. It morphed into something called the EU Inc., which is pushing for a number of reforms across the EU to create a more conducive environment for startups to grow to incredible sizes. So I felt, it was my civic duty to be the person in Malta who is pushing for these same values. Malta is a small country, so at that point I had not seen anyone supporting that mission in my island. And I thought, if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So I decided that I'm going to write my own manifesto, which is inspired by this effective accelerationism, but is relevant for Malta. It's not just based on the same ideals that would be relevant for Spain or for France. There are things that align, but obviously each country has its own problems that need to be solved. So I created a manifesto based on ideas that I've had for the last 3 to 5 years. So people who know me very well will realize that what I put out there was not just something I came up with from one week to the next. There were things that I've been talking about for years, or just talking about them, between friends or for a couple of beers, casually, just like everybody I believe does. I don't think I'm unique over there. But what I wanted to do is to influence the mindset, the way people think. And instead of join a party, a political party, and become kind of just somebody who has to follow the party lines, I decided to announce that I'm going out as an independent politician, put out my manifesto, emailed a bunch of journalists and told them, if you don't publish my work, you are doing a disservice to the future of the country. I mean, it could have gone either way,
That's ballsy. That's ballsy to say the least.
Yes, I literally told them something like, you all want change, but you've got change looking at you in the face. If you don't publish it, and, it got published by a couple media houses. I got invited to some podcasts to talk about them. I did my first podcast in Maltese. I was really nervous for it because I am more confident in speaking in English, but I did okay. And, till today, I'm trying to be active when it comes to policy on the country. I have previously contributed to policy to help create the digital nomad residency in Malta. So I had kind of at least one thing I've done from the private side that worked, because that the digital nomad residency brings in at least 50 million a year in revenue to the government, to the country, to the economy. And that's when I started to believe that actually I do have something to contribute, and if I remain silent and I don't speak out what I think, then it's just going to remain in my head. So I
mean, all power to you. I mean, actually,
it was quite scary, I must say, like receiving hate comments and people insulting
really,
you.
wow.
Yes, especially because I kind of mentioned, I was inspired by Elon Musk. You automatically get people just attacking you just because you said you support Elon Musk. Which was for a bit of time, it was kind of getting me agitated. And then you take a step back and you just kind of realize it's the same 10 people commenting on every single post, and you're like, fuck off.
Well, the thing I was going to say to you was, and this is not trying to undermine what you've done. I suppose. Quick question before I go on to that was, how did the meeting with Robert come up then? How did that come up? Who's the Prime Minister? I mean, what's the story behind that?
I didn't know Robert Abela, the president of Malta, at all. I never met him. He never heard my name, nothing. But the same day I posted my manifesto, at 10 p.m. at night, he called me up, and he said, "Hi, how are you? I saw you put out."
What, he called you on your phone?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Crazy, right? Like, I mean, like you put out a social media post and you get a call from the Prime Minister. And I mean, it just goes to show, I believe, this is not something that would be unique to me. It's just not many young people or ambitious people take this risk, this political risk, because there's so much fear associated with politics. So many people are prosecuted because they speak what they think about government, or they have a political opinion. So it really opened my eyes that actually maybe it's not that hard. It's not that difficult to kind of become popular in a sense. But yeah, he invited me to meet up, and 1 month later I was in his office. And when you meet a public person and you only know what is written about them, you kind of, you have like a judgment that you need to suppress, because now you're meeting the actual person, right? So the press isn't always very kind to him. So most of the stuff I know about him is stuff that they would have written about him, maybe ridiculing or commenting and saying just negative stuff, because mostly negative things are written about politicians. We hardly have a journalist who will say, let's write a nice article today. It's hardly ever happens. It's always, how can we spin this to sound even worse than it actually is? It's crazy. But that's the way social media, I guess, rewards journalists, which respect to them, but it's unfortunate. And I got to meet him. I was impressed. Honestly, I was impressed, because I was able to speak to the person, explain all of each proposition one by one. After the meeting, he introduced me to a couple of other ministers that would be responsible for certain of the sectors, so I can actually talk to them and explain my ideas. He asked me, "What's your intentions here?" I told him, "Listen, I don't need a job in the government. I don't want a job in the government. It's not what I'm looking for. I just have ideas. I want my country to succeed. If my country succeeds, I'm kind of invested in the country, so it will benefit me indirectly as a citizen, So those are my whole intentions over there. And I personally don't want to be elected anytime soon because I feel like I have a lot more of my life to live before I could say, yeah, I'll stay in Malta for 5 years and not leave randomly for a month to Portugal or to Bansko. And I do want to continue to prove to myself and maybe even to the world that, hey, look, I can do things. You can trust me to execute on my ideas. You can trust me to build something ambitious. And it's not just talk. And I think we do need more people like that. I'm not saying we need more people like me, but we do need more people who are able to build things in the real world, to build things that
Well, I think,
function.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would say is, you the phrase is "stand up and be counted," right? That's what you've done, and as I was just going to say, so thanks for explaining that. I think it's very important what you've done, and I think it's all credit to you. And it's obviously the start of the journey, but that's a great story. What a fantastic story! But then on Instagram, I was normally, you see, just to let you know the audience, right? Normally, I've probably seen Luca with his shirt off, yeah, basically half naked, usually in nightclubs or bars or whatever that I've been out with him in different countries. So to see him in a suit with a tie on was quite a revelation, actually. And
I love it.
And also, the revelation also was the hat, the swag that you created. So do you want to explain about the swag? Because I think that was absolutely awesome. And I will definitely want to have one of your swag items very soon.
Like I'll say this publicly, there's so many pictures of me on the internet, maybe without a t-shirt or with some drinks or having some fun or being abroad and playing a prank. And to be honest, I'm just waiting for some journalists to pick up these photos and
being thrown around a bar if you've done the surfing. You remember that one?
Yeah, you've seen that on my story. Yeah, some friends lifting me in the air. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's what people want to see from politicians, right? Is that they have a real life, they're a real person, they're not a robot. They're kind of open about who they are, and they're not super reserved and closed box, and you can't see who they actually are. And that's who I am. I'm a very open person, very public person. I don't hide anything. I have nothing that I do that I am ashamed of. That's one thing about me. Even though maybe sometimes I can be a bit crazy, there's nothing I'm ashamed of. So whatever, the internet's there, it's forever, and I'm out there. But yeah, I created some hats, make Malta great again, make Europe great again, and I wore them to meet the Prime Minister. He told me that's a cool hat. I took off the hat whilst we were talking, and then before I left, I said, "Hey, do you mind if we take a photo?" Put the hat back on, and we took a nice picture together. That picture went a bit viral.
I'm waiting for the hoodies and the t-shirts, and the surf shorts. I mean, obviously, surfing's a big part of your life as well, isn't it? So
Yeah, I'm putting together some funding, so I do have some donors that have donated to my campaign, and I'm going to stagger it slowly to kind of bring them out the actual printed versions that I can distribute to certain people, and I'll make sure to keep one for you, Andrew.
Well, no, you should share the links because I'll publish the links with the podcast as well, so we can get a distribution out there. So of course,
awesome.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. I mean, what I would say is that you are a master of stories. Some fantastic stories today. You're a ball of energy. Once somebody meets Luca, they never forget. Your energy is infectious. So I would say keep doing that. And it sounds like obviously you've got a job as a CEO of a tech startup, another tech startup, 6 by your late 20s. So you're not doing so bad. You're kind of keeping your hand in. So keep doing it.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that's what excites me, right? It's building something. It's seeing something that starts as an idea come to life. You know, it's hardly the money that I find motivating. It's the impact. Really, it's the impact, and that's what wakes me up in the morning, is knowing I have people who are looking to me to make decisions, and there are problems I need to solve. So if I don't have anything to solve, I don't have anyone to kind of work with or to lead or something to sell, I find myself very, very sad. So I try to keep busy.
Well, we don't just want to see that version of the Luca, do we? So, come on. So, in terms of today's episode, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, given all the things you've done already, and I know you mentioned all these different places. Actually, I was going to ask you, how many countries have you been to then? How many countries have you visited?
Yeah, I counted them recently. I think I'm at like 48.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it? Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm at 64 at the moment.
Awesome.
But, I'm obviously slightly older than you. Only slightly. Joking.
I mean, the higher the number gets, the more difficult some of the countries become.
Really? Why?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like doing Europe is not so difficult, right?
Mm.
At least traveling to some African countries are a
Yeah,
bit
true.
more challenging, So that's what I mean by the higher the number, it starts to get a bit more challenging.
Then you got to get a motorbike like Masha does.
Yeah, right. Start going overland. I don't really fly too much.
You can knock off a few in the same afternoon. No, one of the things I was just going to ask you about before we wrapped up was about I suppose people listening to this episode should be inspired, right? I'm hoping they should be inspired about what you've achieved already in your the time you've been on this planet, and what God knows what's going to happen next. It's impressive what you've done already. I'm really positive about what you can do in the future. So, given what's going on in the world, people need inspiration. They need to hear these kind of stories, which I think is why I wanted to get you on the show. What would be your big, your big rocks, your big takeaways from what you've learned so far? What would you, if you sat, talking to your 16-year-old version of Luca before you embarked on this last 10 years, what would you say to them? What would you say that they need to consider and think about that the people can take on board?
I believe we all need heroes, and I definitely have had my heroes, and I've definitely had people over the years who sat me down and told, I maybe used to open up more one-on-one, and maybe now I'm a bit more comfortable just sharing publicly with the whole world on the internet. But these people always told me, Luca, you have a mind, you should speak up, So those people definitely allowed me to get out of my shell and to have the confidence to speak my mind. But to my younger self, I would say, it's true. Maybe it seems like my energy is limitless, but you do need to be careful where you invest your energy, because some people might just be net takers of that energy. And
energy vampires, I think I'm called
energy vampires. Yeah. Yeah. So you got to be careful of the parasites out there. And I mean, like, my parents always told me certain things, and I never believed any of them until it actually happened. So maybe I'd say, hey, like, your parents have a point, but you're going to do it anyway, and it's going to suck. But I wouldn't take anything back. I think I learned best by failing, and I put myself in positions where I allowed myself to fail. It was only after failing that I never forgot the lesson. So I feel very grateful that at a young age I left my little island to go and discover this big wide world, and just see how many people there are out there of all kinds of backgrounds, but no matter where someone comes from, you can always find something in common with them. I think maybe to my younger self, I'll say, hey, you're not actually wasting time on YouTube and Googling things and learning about some strange topics. Some of those strange topics might actually turn out to be billion-dollar industries, such as Bitcoin, right? I remember asking my mom to buy some when I was like 13. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Is that I think growing up, you don't understand where the world is going, or that your opinion and your worldview is actually very valuable. And I think that the way the world is changing so fast, that if you're a 16-year-old today, and you spend hours learning about AI, you're probably going to become one of the greatest persons of your generation, because learning about the future, you're not just being fed the present and the past.
Yeah, you're not stagnating. No, some great ones there. The great
At the end
ones.
of the day, a syllabus is made is always outdated by the time it's released. So, yeah.
There's some really good ones. I love the energy one. Yeah, and I think having some heroes, I think that's very good as well. No, thank you for sharing that. That's cool. So, I mean, just to wrap up, I mean, if anybody wants to know more about all these little endeavors you've got, the Luca Arrigo kind of world domination plan, where do they go? What's the best way of getting hold of you?
So if you want to get hold of me, you can send me. I'm LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. So I do see my messages on LinkedIn. I prefer to talk with if it's something business related. It keeps things a bit more organized there. But I am on all socials, Instagram. My personal email is luca@negozio.com. At negozio.com, I do list a couple of the startups that I've done. I list a couple of the places I've been featured. And you can see some of the things I've done over there. At betterstudio.io is where I'm building my unicorn. It's I'm in Malta, but I'm not in Malta. So depending what time of the year it is, you'll find me in different places. I do love talking to people from all over the world, and especially if it's somebody who is starting out and is not sure how to start their first business or to do their first venture. I do enjoy trying to give back to other entrepreneurs just by sharing my experiences in my kind of process of starting a company. It doesn't have to be complicated. Again, sometimes the hardest part is just getting started and understanding what resources you should use. For me, that again, I get a lot of. I do enjoy that. So bouncing ideas, developing business plans, developing these sort of things is something I offer for free. I don't charge people to talk about how to grow a business. It's something that I feel like is my way of giving back to the world is that way. So, yeah.
No, thank you. I mean, thank you for coming on today, because I think it's also, you've shared a lot of really good, valuable, guidance, stories, etc. That it's like giving back anyway through the podcast. So thank you, Luca Arrigo, CEO of Better Studio. Independent candidate for being on the Maltese government at some point in the future.
Future Prime Minister.
Future Prime Minister. Sorry, yes. Let's get it right. Also, wearer of little shirts, wearer of suits as well, surfer, skier, and professional party boy. And
I'm retired.
Sorry, retired. And also, what I was going to say was, whichever country you go to, digital nomad community, which obviously I'm kind of got one foot in there as well, you bring light and laughter into it. So I would say, please continue to do that, Luca, because you're an absolute delight and pleasure to hang out with, especially when you had some raki. So that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast, and Luca Arrigo, and thank you for coming on the show, and see you soon.
See you soon.